Over 800,000 people were arrested in the year 2009 for marijuana possession charges. That is over 800,000 families that are being ripped apart due to the United States government deciding marijuana is a highly addictive and damaging Schedule I drug. Approximately 88% of these arrests were for simple possession charges of a natural plant that has never been known to cause any death. Uses of this plant can be positive or negative like any other drug, but the benefits that it can offer outweigh the negative uses. I have collected information from experts relating to this issue, as well as a personal story from a medicinal cannabis user going through chemotherapy treatment for his cancer. A Schedule I drug is classified as having no known medical use and a high potential for abuse. I will provide you with the facts necessary to persuade you to become a pro-medicinal cannabis user. Hello everyone, my name is Jessica Smith, and today I will be talking to you about medicinal cannabis. Throughout history, cannabis has been used for medicinal purposes as well as recreational purposes. Cannabis's medicinal purposes in the past included appetite stimulant, muscle relaxant, anesthetic, hypnotic, anticonvulsant, and a remedy for migraines. As of 1970, the Controlled Substances Act was passed, which classified cannabis as a Schedule I drug. Now, seriously ill patients that are prescribed or recommended cannabis are at risk for arrest and punishment, as well as their prescribing doctors. As you can see in this slide, cannabis, also known as marijuana, was compared to 17 drugs that are currently FDA approved and popularly prescribed in place of cannabis. As a primary suspect for causes of death, cannabis has a total of 0 deaths associated with it. Now, just to note, these death rates are only suspected to be due to the drugs listed, but deaths could be due to other unrelated issues, such as the diseases that the drugs were initially prescribed for. The main point is not to compare the actual numbers, but to note that even though cannabis was not a primary suspect in any death, it is still illegal. And all the prescription drugs that were primary suspects are still legal. Some may say that because we have these synthetic prescription drugs, that there is no need for medicinal cannabis. Everybody responds differently to medications, and just because one works for one person does not mean that it will work for another. Everyone is different, and cannabis should be available for doctors to prescribe if they see necessary. For some patients, such as AIDS and cancer patients going through chemotherapy, cannabis is a perfect medication. It helps with anxiety reduction, appetite stimulation, nausea reduction, and pain relief, according to the 1991 report from the National Academy of Sciences Institute of Medicine. Are there alternative options to cannabis? And do they have the same effect? Cannabis's main active ingredient is tetrahydrocannabinol, more commonly known as THC. It is responsible for the high feeling that patients experience when using cannabis. They have developed a pill that contains THC within it to help synthesize the effects of cannabis. This pill is Marinol, and it is FDA approved. In the War on Drugs, Opposing Viewpoints, a cancer patient, Richard Brookhiser, talks about his experiences with Marinol. Richard said that the pill increased his levels of anxiety and depression. He also said that the pill was extremely expensive and it was not helpful at all with combating his vomiting, which is a side effect of the chemotherapy he was receiving for his cancer. We can see that this pill is not as effective as cannabis. This is because, along with THC, cannabis includes about 80 other cannabinoids that work together to develop the therapeutic effects of this drug. Don't you think that it is slightly contradictory to say that cannabis has no medical use and then take a pill that has one of the main cannabinoids in cannabis, THC, and incorporate it and approve it by the FDA? Now let us compare cannabis to some legal and illegal recreational drugs. Jack E. Henningfield, PhD, did a study comparing popular drugs to cannabis. This study was presented in a graph shown here and reported by Philip J. Hiltz in the New York Times, August 2nd, 1994 article, Is Nicotine Addictive? It depends on whose criteria you use. Each drug was tested in 5 areas: dependency, withdrawal, tolerance, reinforcement, and intoxication. Dependency is the difficulty level that the user is faced with when attempting to quit. Cannabis has a low dependency rate of 1. Compare that with something that is commonly used and considered harmless, such as caffeine used in coffee, which has a higher dependency rate of 2. Withdrawal is the presence and severity of symptoms present when quitting the drug. Again, only a 1 in the cannabis category, compared to all the other drugs that have higher rates. Tolerance is the amount necessary to satisfy cravings of the drug, and once again, cannabis has a 1. Reinforcement is the ability of the drug to get users to keep taking it, and to take it above all other substances. Cannabis is a 2 in this category, and nicotine, a legal drug, is rated as a 3. Intoxication increases the personal and social damage a user may do and is considered a link between addictions. Cannabis does have a higher intoxication level of 3, but as you can see, a legal drug such as alcohol has a 6 in this category. Now remember back to when I described to you what a Schedule I drug was. Does anyone remember? A Schedule I drug has no medicinal use and is considered to have a high potential for abuse. Doesn't nicotine and alcohol sound like they fit into this category? On page 1 of Richard Lawrence Miller's book, Drug Warriors and Their Prey, he says nicotine falls within the scientific criteria describing a Schedule I controlled substance. Yet, it is legal in the United States and encouraged to be grown by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. We see that cannabis is less toxic and less harmful overall when compared to many common and legal substances. Nonetheless, cannabis is a drug, and with proper regulation, it can be used appropriately. In Chemical Dependency Opposing Viewpoints, it states that in 1998, the DEA's own administrative law judge, Francis L. Young, declared marijuana in its natural form fulfilled the legal requirement of currently accepted medical use in treatment for the United States. But before it could be transferred into a Schedule II drug, the DEA, and not any medical authority, overruled the Judge Young's previous ruling for cannabis's reclassification. Many people will argue that we are setting a bad example for our children by using medicinal cannabis. But why should medicinal cannabis be any different than any other prescription drug that Americans use today? Cannabis is a form of medicine, a very natural form that is unfortunately plagued by negative stereotype. In conclusion, we recall what defines a Schedule I drug: no medical uses and a high potential for abuse, and compare this to what we have discussed about cannabis. Does cannabis have a medicinal use? Yes, cannabis does. We have heard from an actual cancer patient that used cannabis while going through his treatment, and he said that no other drug could replicate the relief that it gave to him. We have seen that the DEA's own judge even believed that cannabis should be reclassified as a Schedule I drug and used for medicinal purposes. Now, for the high potential for abuse, which is a possible issue for any drug, and should be easier to control when cannabis is legally regulated. Currently, there are 16 states, as well as DC, that have already legalized medicinal marijuana. And there are 6 states that are pending legalization of medicinal cannabis. We are slowly starting to change the way America sees cannabis. Cannabis is a viable medicine that needs to be available to physicians if they see fit to prescribe it. The only question now is, why is cannabis still in the Schedule I category, when so many doctors across the United States are currently using it for medicinal purposes? Remember that all of you have the power to change this, so when the time comes for you to vote, vote pro-medicinal cannabis. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.